No, that was not a beer can popping in the background. That was just a Coke Zero. But anyway, moving on with our next segment of International Podcast Day Wrestling Edition, now with Jacob Hewgley of the Mat Geeks. Relatively new show. You've been around the world of the social medias and the internets and the podcasts for a bit, but welcome to the program and thank you for participating.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited. I've been following the show all day. It's kind of my day off, and so been gearing up for it all day, ready to go.
Yeah, so when we talk about where the evolution of your show is, first of all, what is Mat Geeks and what is the impetus behind it?
Yeah. So Mat Geeks it's kind of an organization that I've started to cover the ACC. I've, like you said, I've kind of been in the wrestling world for the past year, really, as you know, actually in the media and producing content, and just kind of had a bunch of different ways that I've thought about going with things, but I really wanted to do something that was meaningful and that helped, and it was something that people wanted that they didn't have, and so I live right in ACC country, and there's a couple of great podcasts. Obviously, you guys got a couple of them. But overall, I feel like it was kind of a soft spot in coverage, and I'm a huge ACC wrestling fan, so why not be part of the solution?
So as we look at the shows you've got up here, we can bring that back up on screen. Actually, I'd like to bring you out there. So you start out and you fire right off with Nathan Tomasello, new hire at Duke. And Duke is probably, when we talk about the coverage of the ACC, probably the one school that really doesn't get much. Of course, we've got Virginia Tech with the show on the network, NC State with the show on the network, Pittsburgh's in wrestling country, Carolina doing good things, and their SID's been really pushing out. They've got a show now, and then you've got what you're doing with Virginia, and of course, my ties to the University of Virginia, being one of my best friends wrestled there. His sons wrestles at the University of Virginia. Talk about Patrick McCormick from the hometown of Bull Island, Poquoson, Virginia, and then you've got ACC news out there, but you're putting more to it. There's the fantasy wrestling spin to it, so you're bringing those two things together. And I guess what's the journey been like here for the first 12 episodes?
It's been great. Like I said, I kind of wanted to really focus on something and put it out there. And my perspective is I wanted basically to go to the coaches and say, hey, I want to give you guys a little bit more coverage. I want you to put out what you want to put out, and not just me coming in, scooping stories or whatever. I want just the ACC to get more coverage in general. So it's been great these first, bunch of episodes. I mean, all the coaches have been super, reachable and grateful for anything. And I've just had such a great time talking to all of them. So, I forget when I'm in the show that I'm like, trying to build this ACC coverage, whatever. I'm just a fan chatting with the coach and hearing about the lineup. And, so far what we've done is we've put out a preview article accompanied with a podcast with the coach for each team, where it's just been a good place for ACC fans or just wrestling fans in general to hear about these ACC teams and how they're building, and the guys they have waiting in the wings, and what all they can be excited about for ACC wrestling.
From a fan standpoint, moving from fan to try to be kind of a media entity, what is the one thing that you've had to struggle with, or one thing you've struggled with that you're working on improving that will make the podcast better?
Well, I think for me personally, it's been the type of conversation style during the podcast. Mm-hmm. I know, like you said, I've been a fan for a long, long time, and some of my favorite podcasts that I listen to aren't generally the straight interview style. They're more of the conversation, right? And so the Inside Trip's one of my favorite, and it's just kind of two dudes at a bar talking, right? And so obviously it's not going to be that exact conversation, when I'm talking to Coach Scott over at UNC or Coach Gavin at Pitt, right? But I want it to be a little bit more that way, and I want it to seem, like we're just having a conversation about the team, right? Not just tell me this, tell me that, but getting into details and talking about personal lives and just kind of everything under the hood.
Yeah, and that's one thing and that's kind of hard to get, even if you've known somebody for years, is try to build that rapport where they'll tell you something, that they probably won't tell the generic report at the NCAA. So that's where, again, building that rapport we'll get some good content. And speaking, Brian was just on with NC State with their show. He's got that rapport with Pat. We were kind of talking about how they can joke with each other, and then you see that with Ben and Brando with the Inside Trip, for example. You bring them up. Those rat bastards didn't even jump on this thing though, because I guess they're off. So I guess they may jump into the after show or whatever, recovery time as we call it. But again, that two guys sitting at a bar, Blood Round's got that thing, the Inside Trip's got that thing, and again, working towards that. That's a tough pill to try to swallow. I mean, not pill to swallow, but tough apple to bite. I don't know. Let me throw up a metaphor, analogy, whatever it is you're trying to do. It's kind of tough. So, what is the next steps? I guess you're 12 episodes in. We've had people that have got a couple hundred episodes here. We've got guests that have had 4 episodes that are coming up later. So again, how do you stand out 12 episodes in and try to battle for those ears? There's almost 70 something podcasts out there for wrestling.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is, and it kind of goes with the question you asked a minute ago, what am I kind of trying to adapt from being a fan? It's really, at first getting into this, it's like, oh, I want everybody to hear it. I want everybody to hear it. And I do, but it's really more about just, putting out what the teams want to put out, and people will listen, right? People will get there. I think there's a million stories in the ACC to cover and to talk about, and it's something I love doing in my spare time. And so, we just got done with the lineup previews. We've done rankings. We've done a little bit of fantasy stuff. It's just kind of trying to hit every angle of the ACC and all the stories. We talked to Tony Ramos about his upcoming match this weekend. Coach Gavin is getting back into it with the upcoming Flow 8-man bracket. So definitely have to talk to him about that. But and I know I've had a bunch of personal conversations with these coaches, and I want them, like I said, to put out what they want to put out. So, some coaches want to talk about their university and, the great success that people can have choosing their university. And, really, I just want to hit it from all angles, and I want to hit it from whatever angle they want to put out.
Looking at the background here, we've got UGA. I mean, you got your degree from the University of Georgia, that the other Athens, if you're a wrestling thing, there's the school in Ohio has wrestling. They're in Athens, Ohio U. But Georgia, let's explain how do you follow wrestling coming, while you were in college at Georgia? That's what I want to know.
Yeah. So I actually played basketball growing up for a long time. My dad always tried to get me into wrestling, but like you said, Georgia's it wasn't a very big wrestling state. And then I just went to practice one day and loved it and got into it. And I remember the first time I ever watched it on TV was the national tournament in 2010. I got to watch Brent Metcalf and McDonough. And then I was a huge Iowa fan, right? And I still love Iowa. But yeah, I mean, I just kind of got into it. The first practice I went to, I was hooked. The first, event I watched, I was hooked. And, the first article and rankings and everything, it just keeps going and keeps going.
When you see wrestling evolving the way it is, and then you've got podcasting everywhere, and then bringing all those things together, I guess, what was you talk about the coverage, wanting more coverage, but what made you think you could do a podcast? Because, and I don't mean that disparagingly. It's one of those things where, I'm sitting there. I mean, my idea, the genesis of this network, was listening to college sports radio on my way to the World Team Trials in Madison, hearing, Sirius College XM, and it was like the Alabama coaches show, followed by the Auburn coaches show, and then Oregon. And I'm like, I can do this for wrestling. And that's kind of what you're starting there with Mat Geeks. But what really made you think, was like, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm actually going to start this thing up.
So that's an easy one. It's 100% Ben and Brando over at Inside Trip. I obviously big FRL fan. FRL was, kind of my first episode or my first show I listened to that got me into the podcasting side of wrestling. But when I found the Inside Trip and I listened to them, I probably listened to them for, I don't even know, it was probably multiple years or however long it was. And just one day driving home, like I said, kind of clicked. It was like, I could do that. I can figure out how to make this work. And so I actually reached out to them and said, I love what you're doing. I'm interested in doing it myself. Do you have any pointers? Where do I go from here? And they're awesome guys, right? They're super receptive, and they helped me kind of figure out how to get it going and kind of what direction to go with things. And they've been really helpful every step of the way.
How quickly did you learn what not to do when it comes to podcasting?
There's It's definitely trial and error, right? And especially when you get started, and for a while I was doing it just me by myself talking, right? So I'd be down in the basement just talking to myself, and um, it's it's hard to figure out those things at first because you really don't like listening to yourself. So I don't really want to go back and listen to my own voice. But eventually, I got there, and I think you learn stuff very quickly when you forget to record something and you get through talking for 30 minutes, or you go live and it has no sound, or there's a bunch of different things that can go wrong.
We just had that issue. Yeah. It's just starting the last is like, we can't hear you, JB. Yeah. So again, that's the one thing I love about podcasting. And I told Sam and Jude this also, that your first show is always going to be your worst show. So is that kind of when you find that out, you're like, wait a minute, we wasted that on Nathan Tomasello?
Yeah. Well, I mean, fortunately, I've been doing it before. So
right, because you started your shows through the Home Ad Advantage kids. Right?
Yeah, and I'm still with HMA. I still do a lot of stuff with them over there. This is just kind of I wanted to start the ACC coverage, and kind of wanted it to be its own separate thing after talks with Sam and Jude and all of them. But I'm still part of the HMA team and still do a lot of stuff with them. But yeah, fortunately, I started doing fantasy wrestling stuff and then got on to HMA pretty quickly. And they really helped me a lot, and that's wild. I mean, they're wise beyond their years, so they've helped me a whole lot. And then I got co-host Seth Gross and Jack Mueller have been over there with me, and so it's just crazy the journey that I've been on since I've started this thing.
Yeah, to come from a wrestling fan standpoint, to be like, okay, now I'm co-hosting shows with guys that have wrestled in the NCAA finals and who don't know me from Adams going into this. It's got to be kind of cool.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely wild. Because I was a big fan, right? I'm a big fan. And, the first time I remember the first show we ever did together with me, Seth, and Jack, because we kind of, we pulled them on as guests, and then we talked to them a little bit behind the scenes. And then we ended up deciding we're going to do this thing and we're going to do it together. And I remember the first show, it was just crazy because I'm leading the conversation, I'm hosting this thing. And I feel like a fraud talking to these dudes that I've looked up to. Right. And I remember getting to the end of the show and kind of joking around that, you guys realize there's 6 All-American honors between the three of us. So it's been really fun talking to them.
Yeah, it's a little bit of that imposter syndrome. You're like, what am I doing here? Even I've been covering the sport for over 20 years. I announced the Night of Conflict this past weekend down in Sioux City, great event that IA Russell put on. And the kid that was running the music next to me goes, how long you been doing this? And I'm talking about PA. And I'm like sitting there going, holy crap. I've been doing this 27 years. It's like, so, and even doing it that long, you sit around and be like, what am I doing here? Or you don't want to screw things up. So you want to treat everything, like you belong. There's also the fake it till you make it. But one thing about podcasting is you can always change and drop a hat. You're not locked into a format. So when you went from talking to yourself to having guests, how have you tried to learn how to converse? Because we're all digital. We're used to Zoom calls now pretty much, but and what we're doing here. How have you learned to react and respond in a way and pick up where your guests are like, okay, this is where I know they're done talking now. I guess finding that synergy between co-hosts and guests. That's
definitely one of the hardest parts in adapting to it, especially when you're adapting to it with guys of that caliber, right? Guys, Seth Gross, Jack Mueller, NCAA champions, NCAA finalists, some of the best ever come through. And so they'll be talking about something and have an opinion, and I'll think something differently. And before I even talk, I'm like, should I say this? Should I even try to contradict what they're saying? Who am I to say something different? It's a really wild situation, but yeah, it's definitely a learning curve and a process trying to figure out, when to jump in and when to be quiet. And it's kind of one of those things you just got to do and learn on the job.
Talking tech now, this is the kind of stuff that most everybody this morning has been kind of jumping in from their computer, not necessarily in their studio, so to speak. But I see headphones, I see nice microphone. What type of gear are you running here?
Honestly, I'm still getting into that world too, right? So these headphones were something that I had for my, my Xbox. And
I've got a 14-hour stream today. I'm not wearing basically my cans, as they would call them. I'm not wearing my studio. That's why I've got the buds today. I normally never wear these, but For an hour, I can wear these. For 14, I am not wearing these things because I'll get cauliflower. I don't have cauliflower ear yet. I'm gonna just be crazy.
Man. Yeah, no, I'm starting to get that a little bit. I coach wrestling, so it's starting to get there, getting bad. But yeah, I gotta kind of maybe cover them up a little bit.
But as far as your headphones. But what type of mic are you using here?
I have a PIY painting mic. It's honestly, I looked on Amazon. I didn't know anything about what I was doing, and I, found the best seller that was at a decent price, and it's worked great. I also
PIY painting mic.
Yeah,
I'm pulling this bad boy. Again, I've tried to. Okay, I'm looking at this bad boy. I'm going to bring this up. Let's see. Do I want to bring it up on? I'm just looking at it. Before I put it up on screen, I don't know. I'm just okay. That looks. Let's bring it up on screen here, just because
it is not the most high tech thing in the world.
But it looks impressive when you're looking at the kit you get. And you know what? The way I'm hearing you sound right now, from a starter perspective, that's probably fine. I mean, like I said, I would always recommend, I sent Jude an ATR 2100 because it's got the USB and the XLR. So when you grow into a mixer or an interface, but I'd say this is a pretty good place to start. And I'll be honest with you, I've been podcasting for 12 years and I've never seen this microphone before, nor have I seen it brought up on any of the shows. So that's a cool thing, although it's a condenser. So you've got a little bit of bounce back when your room treatment there, but otherwise it seems like it's a good microphone to grow from for sure.
Yeah, no, it's great. And I mean, I'm married and I have to justify my purchases to my wife.
Oh, dude. Yeah. Okay. I'm not going to throw my wife under the bus on that one. So yeah, I'm with you there.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm a high school teacher. And so this is what I do for fun in my spare time. I really enjoy doing it. And so it's not something that I put $1 million into right now. Maybe down the road, if I make some money off of it, then I'll put the money back into it. But, for right now, this microphone's doing awesome. And I dug up a camera, a Canon camera that I have, and I've been using that for a lot of my shows to kind of spread out my picture and have a little bit better looking studio. But, it's been pretty simple so far and it's worked.
Of course, the technology, that's where I've got, because I'm running certain gear, and I pulled out stuff that I had from my announcing and the road gigs forever and at USA Wrestling when I start Mat Chat out there. And now it's like, okay, now I've set it and forget it, or basically I come in, hit record, and I'm good to go. So when it comes to technology, what are you guys using? Because this is, again, you're coming in it from scratch, just like some of the other guests that are still new into it. When you want to start a show, what were you looking at? Because of course, Anchor's been popular to just pop up a show pretty much overnight. But what was the process like of getting everything from idea to actual first show distributed?
Yeah, I think you already said it. I mean, Anchor is the way to go if you're starting up. If you have ever thought about doing a podcast, wrestling, football, whatever, I would definitely check out Anchor. They make it really easy for you to record everything and put it out there, and it's super easy and it's free. And so, just like the mic and the cam and everything like that, like there's definitely things that I'm going to upgrade down the road, but it's a fantastic starting point, and Anchor's really got everything you need as a starter.
Now that your episode's in and you've got all these episodes with the Home Mat Advantage kids, and then you're out on your own, and how much time do you have to listen to other shows, rather than when teaching, having a family, and then I don't know, doing your own shows? Because that's the one thing to try to. I'm constantly swiping on Overcast. It's like, well, I don't have time. Do I really want to listen to that? No. And then I'm like, okay, I go to my non-wrestling folder, and then my non-Mat Talk folder, and then playlist and such. I'm like, yikes, is like, and then you'll see something that jumps out. I got to listen to this episode of 99% Invisible. I mean, how do you balance the other interests in listening and in production, and try to keep your mind tuned in on how to learn, I guess, the format and the medium?
Yeah, honestly, I mean, that's been another way that I've learned anything that I've done in this. It's just been listening to different podcasts. I have a bunch of them that I listen to. I try to listen to as many as I possibly can, just to kind of learn from everybody and pick up things that I can do better. And then also it's really relevant just to kind of stay in the know of what's going on in the world, and, the different takes and different views, and, be able to talk about it. Right. And so obviously I think the majority of people that listen to podcasts probably listen to FRL, or at least started with FRL. And then obviously my Home Mat Advantage guys are awesome. They're, Jude, Sam, Mason, Seth, Jack, Tony, everybody's been doing a fantastic job putting out content for that. I love, you just had Brian on before, the Pack Mentality Poppins podcast. I was a little scared to get into all the P's. But Ward Wrestling Live has been a really great one that's on the come up. Dan Ward's been doing a great job just kind of getting a million interviews from everybody's different perspective.
It's what I love too. That's one thing about the pandemic has done is, you throw that out there and, again, the nuance of what it is, but he's got his show now up. I actually just found it in Apple Podcasts. I didn't realize it was there because I knew he was doing the Facebook Lives, and then he's had people come in, and I'm like, one of the guests he had was a girl who wrestled my wrestling club when she was a kid, and we didn't know each other super well. It's one of those like, oh yeah, that's the girl from Smithfield. Now she's coaching a high school up in Northern Virginia, so I'm jumping in, I'm chatting, and I'm throwing the PWA references out there, and it's just really cool. It's just like the guy is just prolific and learning about the sport from a parental perspective is pretty cool. So I've definitely enjoyed watching his stuff. And then Fanco down there just left a comment in the chat what he's been doing, with his not necessarily directly related to his job at Campbell, but his Josiah's done a great job at just getting people thinking. I mean, he put lists and videos and stuff together, and then the podcast YouTube wrestling side has really blown up. And then not directly a podcast. I mean, what Zach's done with Stalemates is just kind of it's just one of those things. It's like you want to watch, but sometimes you don't want to admit you watch either. It's like, did you watch Stalemates? I have no idea what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Stalemates is awesome. I love it. I love it. It was very needed, and I think it's something cool because, like you said, like a lot of us are busy, right? I have other stuff that I'm doing during the day, and so there'll be something that happens, and I don't have time to go search through Twitter for an hour and figure out who said this and this comment and that comment. And so what he's doing over there is awesome, and it wraps up everything into quick 10-minute videos, so I still know what's going on, but I didn't have to do all the research for hours. So.
I love his the subtle cuts. Be like, then it's just little things like that. And
oh yeah,
he did he did send me a sticker and a shirt here recently. He's not jumping on the show though, but again, not technically a podcast, it's a wrestling show, but again the term podcast has just been pretty much just engrossed everything now. But if there's one thing you want to accomplish throughout, I mean, I guess with COVID kind of limits our options here, but we've got a couple months left in the year 2020. Can't get over fast enough. But what are some things that you want to accomplish this year while moving forward? I mean, you've talked about the goals otherwise of coverage of the ACC, but there's something you definitely know you want to accomplish with the show, whether it be on HMA or whether it be with the Mat Geeks. What do you think that's going to be before 2020 is over?
It's hard before 2020 is over because, like you said, we don't even have wrestling until then. So I think before 2020 is over, I just want to continue to build these relationships with these coaches at these different ACC schools and, really build trust with them so that they know that, I'm coming at it from a good place and I just want to put out what's best for them. So I want to really, continue to build those relationships and be able to get out to as many ACC fans as I can, just so I can bring them all the inside scoops and news and best stories from the ACC and all these, just shine a light more on, one of the best conferences in wrestling.
As we wrap up this episode or this session, where can people find Mat Geeks? How can they follow you? Because, I mean, you're 12 episodes in, so you haven't had the saturation of a year or so, because usually it takes wrestling fans about a year and a half to really change their viewing habits or their listening habits or their website habits. So, a lot of podcasts don't make it past 7 episodes. You've done that. You've cleared that first hurdle. So where can they find you? Where can they tune into Mat Geeks?
Yeah, so we have a Facebook page and we're on Twitter. Besides that, most places that you find podcasts were available. I love Apple Podcasts. That's where I find all mine. But, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Google Podcasts, all that kind of stuff. And then we are also on Rokfin. All of my actual show videos are posted on Rokfin, as well as all the articles and rankings and all that kind of good stuff. And we will actually have the second episode of the Virginia Wrestling Podcast coming out later today. Talked with Trent and Travis for a while earlier this morning, so that'll be coming out later today.
TP1 and TP2, yeah. It's one of them. I don't know if you brought them up one of the cars. The one of them had, I think TP2. I'm not sure which one was which, but had this bright yellow car when they were at the training center. I just remember it's there goes TP2. You know which one's there. But also, you bring up Rokfin here about this series of what we're doing today, International Podcast Day Wrestling Edition. These individual episodes will be cut up, spliced up, and put up on the Mat Talk Online Rokfin channel, so you can get that. You'll get the audio earlier than the releases on our Patreon at mattalkonline.com/join the team. So I'm trying to hit them from every different angles, and of course, you're watching live here on YouTube, Periscope, Twitch. Facebook Live was going to be the thing today, but some reason their API blog blew up on StreamYard. So that's where we're at. It's cool. We've got the chats out there. We got the sways. We got everybody out there. So again, appreciate your time and look forward to what you got going on. We've got Earl Smith coming up after the break. Let's just double check. 2 to 2:30 Central Time. Earl Smith, Easy E from MP will come up. But Jacob, appreciate the time and look forward to what you've got moving forward.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.